Hello, I'm Robert Griffin, the Executive Minister here at the Sunshine Cathedral in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I want to thank you for joining us for worship via the internet today. And if you are ever in the Fort Lauderdale area, let me personally invite you to stop by and worship with us on Sunday mornings at 9 and 10:30 a.m. We also invite you to join us on our Facebook group or follow us on Twitter. But for this moment, let's go inside and see what exciting worship opportunity lay in store for us.
Our first reading is a reading from the Wisdom of Virgil. Come what may, all bad fortune is to be conquered by endurance. In these human words, God's voice is heard. Our second reading is a reading from the Wisdom of the Buddha. Endurance is one of the most difficult disciplines, but it is to the one who endures that the final victory comes. In these human words, God's voice is heard.
Our third reading is a reading from Paul's letter to the Corinthians. As servants of God, we have commended ourselves in every way, through great endurance in afflictions, hardships, calamities, beatings, imprisonment, riots, labors, sleepless nights, hunger. By purity, knowledge, patience, kindness, holiness of spirit, genuine love, truthful speech, and the power of God, with the weapons of righteousness for the right hand and for the left, in honor and dishonor, in ill repute and good repute. We are treated as impostors, and yet are true, as unknown, and yet we are well known, as dying, and see we are alive, as punished and yet not killed, as sorrowful yet always rejoicing, as poor yet making many rich, as having nothing yet possessing everything. In these human words, God's voice is heard.
In our scripture reading today, the Apostle Paul is writing to a congregation with which he has had a contentious relationship. He has helped start several churches, and he keeps up with them. He sort of is leading them by distance, sending letters and emissaries, visiting when he can, when he's not, in jail. But even then, the post works. And but this congregation, he's had a rough time with. He doesn't understand the Corinthians. Corinthians have a culture very different than anything that he's used to. They're a little wild. They're kind of some party people, and Paul's never been one for a good time, and so he doesn't get all of their always wanting to have these big feasts and where they eat too much and drink too much, and even in their worship they worship too much. If this one's got a thing going on, the next one has to do it better than that one, and he just doesn't get the Corinthians. So he's always trying to dial them back a little bit, and they don't take well to that. And so there's all this back and forth. In fact, Corinthians is the church that he has to write 2 letters to. Usually he writes 1 letter and it's a one and done deal. But Corinthians, he has to tell them off a few more times. So there's a second letter. Oh, and another thing, you Corinthians. Now there is a book called 2 Thessalonians, but he didn't write that one. Of the 13 books attributed to Paul, he really only wrote 7. And so, but 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Paul wrote. So the Corinthian church is the one. And another thing, I forgot to tell you off quite enough. But in the second letter, he takes a softer tone a little bit. And so we see him, this church, they've been playing this sort of tug of war. And so he reminds them that he loves them. He reminds them that he's working hard for them. He reminds them that he's making sacrifices for them. So they may not see eye to eye on this, that, or the other thing, but they're in his heart. And he wants them to know that. So he's sharing his heart. And so he reminds them that his work has put him in harm's way. Fellow followers of the Christ way have been suspicious of him. He calls himself the Apostle Paul. But the apostles that the living Jesus handpicked, he wasn't with them. And so later, after Jesus' crucifixion, here comes Paul, who used to not like the followers of Jesus very much, saying, you know what, I had this mystical experience, and dead but now still living Jesus came to me in a vision and made me an apostle. When all the other apostles were like, no, that's not how it worked with any of us. You're a crazy person. So he has contentious relationships with the apostles. So his the other followers of the Christ way, the other leaders of this, they're suspicious of him. The Corinthian church doesn't always understand or appreciate him. People from his former life have given up on him. He has received criticism and insults and even slander. He has had rocks thrown at him. He's been chased out of town. He's been locked up. And still, he remains willing to make sacrifices to help others. He's willing to make sacrifices to help people. He's willing to make sacrifices to build community and to get a message of hope into more people's lives. So let people say mean things about him, he's telling his friends in Corinth. Let people say mean things about him, try to vilify and exclude him, threaten his safety even. He will remain faithful and courageous, and he'll operate as best he can with integrity and with hope that beyond the moment of difficulty, there are better days to come. His experience and witness agrees with the Roman poet Virgil's belief. Virgil said, "Come what may, all bad fortune is to be conquered by endurance." Just don't give up too soon. If you have a vision, to be faithful to the vision. If you have a goal, if you have a calling, if you have a purpose, even when things are difficult, even when things are not working out the way you wanted them to right in this moment, even when it's hard to make it happen, be faithful to the vision, and the vision will carry you through the hard times. Endurance is what will conquer bad fortune. And the Buddha also concurs, saying endurance is one of the most difficult disciplines, but it is to the one who endures that the final victory comes. The prophet Habakkuk said, "If the vision delays, wait for it. It will surely come to pass." And so these are the advice of the spiritual leaders that have come from various parts of the world at various times. Of course, there's always going to be that time that is difficult or uncertain or unfair, but we have this grander vision of what it can be. We're going to live into that vision and be faithful to that vision, and that vision will carry us to the reality. These stories and sayings about endurance call to mind more recent history for me. I remember today that in June, the month of June, 1973, The founding church in the MCC movement, MCC Los Angeles, now known as Founders MCC, was burned to the ground by an act of arson. Actually, the shell pretty much was intact, but the inside completely gone. Obviously, our founding church and the movement at birth survived that terrifying ordeal. But it was terrifying, 5 years into the MCC movement, for the founding church, this big, beautiful place in the second largest city in the country, to be attacked and destroyed. Also, that same year, June 1973, a small MCC in the French Quarter of New Orleans was destroyed by arson. The New Orleans church met in an upstairs bar, like you do, especially if you're a church in the French Quarter. In the early days, MCCs often met in bars. Bars were integral to gay community life, and so when starting a church, a friendly bar that wasn't open on Sunday morning made for a natural meeting space. When MCC founder Troy Perry was asked about some of our churches worshiping in taverns and pubs, he is quoted as having said, "We didn't care. If Jesus could turn water into wine, hell, we could worship in a bar." Love me some Troy Perry. In the New Orleans church, people would often worship in the morning, there at that upper lounge, leave to grab some lunch, return later for cocktails and dancing in the same room. We kind of do the same thing here at the Sunshine Cathedral, but in the reverse order. We have church all the time, and every once in a while we'll set up a dance floor or a movie screen or a bar. But still, this idea that the community can do everything in one place, that is an old idea in the MCC tradition. And so in the French Quarter, in the 70s, there was this MCC presence. It was shared a space with a bar, and on June 24th, 1973, the bar that doubled as an MCC worship space was attacked, and the resulting fire was called the largest gay massacre in U.S. history. Now, of course, Southern firebombing of sacred places wasn't a new phenomenon. During the civil rights struggles in the 1960s, churches were bombed. 10 years before the LA and New Orleans MCCs were victimized by arson, the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama was bombed, and 4 young girls were killed. Children, just killed. But long before the bombings of the 60s, Southern churches were burned. 2 centuries ago, a church was founded in Charleston, South Carolina, an African Methodist Episcopal church that would later be called Emmanuel. In 1816, Morris Brown founded that church, and about 3/4 of the city's African American population flocked to the church. From its inception, the parish was a center for anti-slavery activism, and for their efforts, for their endurance, for their daring to dream of better days, their worship services were often interrupted by white people in town trying to intimidate them. Eventually, the city government imposed a ban on black churches, only allowing them to worship if a Caucasian person was present. And Emmanuel Church was forced to disband, and its building was burned to the ground. However, the church continued to operate underground, even without a building, and the congregation was part of the Underground Railroad, helping enslaved people escape to freedom. And after the Civil War, the church was rebuilt, but that building was destroyed by an earthquake. And the church was rebuilt again, enjoying the neo-Gothic structure that it has now. Booker T. Washington and later Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. both spoke at Emmanuel. It is a church of historic significance. It has been part of working to build a better world for 200 years, even when it has experienced severe setbacks and oppression and injustice. It has just rebuilt and regrouped and moved forward to be a powerful witness of hope in the world. It has survived racism. It has survived persecution. It has survived fire. It has survived earthquake, and from every devastating misfortune, Emmanuel Church, often called Mother Emmanuel because of its age and significance, has been resurrected to new life and new hope and renewed purpose. Literally, from the ashes of despair, Mother Emmanuel, like a phoenix, has risen. And last Wednesday evening, during a Bible study and prayer service, racism attacked Mother Emmanuel again. A young white man entered the Bible study, sat among the worshipers for about an hour, and eventually opened fire, killing 9 people, including the pastor, who's also a state senator. Another victim was an 87-year-old woman, a woman who had survived Jim Crow, a woman who had survived the civil rights unrest of the 60s, a woman who had survived segregation, a woman who had lived to be almost 90, was mowed down by a bullet in a worship service. But Mother Emmanuel has proven for 200 years that a sense of purpose, a commitment to mission, a lived integrity, and the power of love cannot be destroyed. This is not, as some unscrupulous commentators have claimed, an attack on religion. Charleston, South Carolina is full of churches. This person picked this church, not because it had Bibles inside, not because people inside identified as Christian. I promise that is not why. This was not an attack on religion. This was an attack on diversity. This was an attack on human dignity. This was an attack on equality. And it can't be dismissed as one crazy person, one misguided person, one misled person, one person who just acted out. This is the result of attitudes that have not been corrected, that have been elevated to appropriate status, being made manifest in human behavior. This is not an isolated incident. This is an incident that has happened far too often because the attitudes that manifest as behavior have not been corrected still. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a fluke. This wasn't one person's emotional damage. This is the evil of racism taking form. It is what happens when we talk about communities as if they are subhuman, when we talk about women as if their bodies are property for men to legislate against, when we talk about same-gender loving people as if they are some sort of disease instead of people in love trying to live with integrity, when we talk about immigrants as if they are somehow a problem instead of the salvation of our country, when we talk about people of color as if they had a bad time a long time ago and should get over it, we are perpetuating the evil that will manifest as violence. And those who speak so irresponsibly and so reprehensibly must be called out, not by name, not in personal confrontation, but the message must be confronted with a truer and better message. I hope every pulpit in this country is talking about and praying about Mother Emmanuel AME Church this morning. But whether they do or not, Sunshine Cathedral is. This was an attack on people of color for who they are. But as MCC showed after its churches were bombed, as 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham showed after it was bombed, as Emmanuel AME Church has shown time and again since its antebellum beginnings, hatred can delay progress, but it cannot stop it. Fear can cause chaos and destruction, but it cannot keep new life from emerging. Oppression can launch its evil forces, but they will never defeat the power of love. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. We are going forward to the morning. Racism, personal or institutional, and we are so quick to dismiss it as just the personal, and the personal as just the craziest, the Klan and the skinheads and the people who behave in ways that make us all uncomfortable. No, the racism that is taken to those extremes exists in a lot of people, and even those who are working personally to overcome it. If we don't tackle the systems that perpetuate it, it will forever be with us. And so even institutional, especially institutional racism, is a problem. Racism, personal or institutional, subtle or overt, is incompatible with following the non-European, non-American Jesus. We are not talking about politics or political correctness. We are talking about the gospel, and the gospel delivered by a brown man executed for who he was will not allow for us to be silent in the face of racism. The New Testament tells us, whoever claims to love God yet hates a brother or sister is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother or sister whom they've seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. And that is the message that we have to reclaim. That is the message of the Samaritan. That the good Samaritan is the good neighbor, the other, the one that other people were talking trash about, the one that the other people tried to ignore or exclude or marginalize. That is the one that embraces full humanity. And so as long as we are seeing the Samaritan as the other, we are not the people of faith we want to be. That is the gospel message. We have to not only say, well, that's in the past, or I wasn't raised that way, or I try to be a better person than that. We have to attack these things systemically, heal these things globally, or they will keep coming up. I am bone weary of seeing people of color used for target practice in this country. Whether it's dogs and tear gas and hoses in the 60s or bullets in the 21st century, I am tired of those who are supposed to keep us safe attacking communities of color. I am tired of hatred of the other being lifted up as if it were a religious value. And I am tired of when it manifests itself being used then to say, to actually push more reprehensible agendas that promote more hate. The answer to Mother Emanuel isn't to arm the people of Mother Emanuel. The answer to Mother Emanuel isn't to say, see, religion is under attack, so let's save religion so that a religion can oppress the queers. That is ridiculous, and we have to stand up and say, the problem with Mother Emanuel is that people were praying while black, and it is still acceptable in this country to attack people on the margins. We as Christians have to say, in the name of Jesus, we will not put up with it anymore. Hatred of the other is incompatible with spiritual integrity. As people of faith, regardless of our racial or ethnic heritage, this issue is our issue because justice is never about just us. Now, please, this isn't meant to shame this person or get this person all head up. This isn't about let me get the room fired up and then pass the plate real quick. This is much deeper than that. So please, beyond the emotions of fear, guilt, shame, excitement, hope, whatever the emotional thing going on in the room at the moment is, beyond that, please listen to the message. racism has emerged with a renewed and unholy boldness, and it is nefarious. And to ignore it is to complicitly agree with it, and that is not going to fix it. It is up to people of faith and goodwill to call it out, to speak out against it, and to insist that the ugly forces of injustice and oppression will not prevail, not on our watch. All faithful communities dedicated to hope, compassion, and peace will overcome oppression's destructive efforts, not by might, not by power, but by the spirit of justice love. We declare in the name of God that Black lives matter. Now, all lives matter. Go ahead. All lives matter, but whenever I see that as a response, or instead of, I recoil. To say when a community has been targeted, to respond to their pain with, well, all lives matter, is part of the injustice system. It is part of the institutionalized racism. Black lives matter. All lives matter, of course, but let's not dilute the issue at hand. I don't want, when people were suffering with AIDS, and people would immediately say, yeah, but diabetes is still a problem. Yes, it is. And let's deal with diabetes and not compare it to AIDS when we're doing so. Let's, when the issue is at hand, give the issue the attention it deserves. All lives matter, but let's not dilute the problem we're talking about today. Let's be bold enough to speak to the crisis before us. Yes, we stand against misogyny. Yes, we stand against homophobia and heterosexism. Yes, we stand against xenophobia. But today, let's be very clear. We stand against racism. We stand against racially motivated hatred. We stand against white supremacy. In fact, please stand now. I think two of you didn't before, so go ahead and get up. Please stand now. Rise as you are able, in solidarity with our sisters and brothers of Mother Emanuel AME Church, and as a witness to our dedication to heal racism in ourselves and in our nation. Let us rise and sing this powerful prayer. Lift every voice and sing. Lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the day that hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat of not our weary feet, come to the place on which our parents sighed. Over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out of the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the bright gleam of our star is cast. God of our God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far as by thy might let us into the light. Keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadow beneath thy hand, we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land. This prayer we offer in the name of all that is holy, and as we live it, this is the good news. Amen.
Don't do that when she's standing here. Honey, stop, I'm doing something important. That's just something. Well, this is what I got from the IRS. This is all I have. And then this is 20, this is my, and then there's a couple, there's 22, there's several. I don't know if you need them or not. What the hell do I get? Well, she'll say that. Yeah, she'll say that. Oh, I think they're both on this one. No. Yeah, that's why I gave you this one. Yeah, and you can call me for anything. I'm so appreciative. You have no idea. I've never had this happen before. I don't know what happened. I just was thinking last night about it. What if that got dropped somewhere on the street or something? And someone picked it up? Well, no one filed though, or they would have.
Thank you for joining us today here at the Sunshine Cathedral. If you're ever in the Fort Lauderdale area, we invite you to stop by and worship with us on Sunday mornings at 9 and 10:30 a.m. If you'd like to make a donation to the Sunshine Cathedral, or if you'd like to find out other resources that the Cathedral has to offer, please visit us at www.sunshinecathedral.org. Until the next time, we look forward to seeing you here at the Sunshine Cathedral.